Hi, a couple of years ago I started getting into D&D. As my passion for D&D grew, so did my collection of minis, and like many others out there, I now have boxes of shame, legions of unpainted minis. Now this is my underdog story. This is me painting every single one of my miniatures. Alright guys and gals out there, hope you're having a good time. Today I'm gonna paint 4 of my Myconids adults. I'm really looking forward to these. They're from Wizkids, from the Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures line. The first thing I need to do is, of course, to clean some of the mold lines, and I do this using sort of an X-Acto knife or a hobby knife. Sometimes I tend to use the offside, just to sort of be a little bit more safe. Then I clean this up with a toothbrush, preferably one that you don't use for brushing your teeth. Now, one thing I noticed when I was sort of just dry fitting the Myconids on the bases was that the actual bottom part of the miniature had warped quite a lot, and you can see here that it looks actually quite out of place, and I think I even have one version that is actually a little bit worse, and it seemed to be the smaller ones of the 2 Myconids that you get. So you see that one? So there's only one thing to do, and that was to basically put on a kettle, boil some water, and try to bend them into shape. Now once I'd done that, out comes the super glue, and I glued them to their bases, and it looked something like this. Now the 4 little happy mushroom men all sitting on their bases. So after that I primed them, and I only actually did a white zenithal priming from above, and I did this just because I know I wanted their actual sort of mushroom hat to really pop. So I'm going to start out with some green gaming from Vallejo. Now I should have known this at this point, but I smooched it on, and sure enough, I mean it looks a little bit too, how should I say this, a little bit too green, pure green, whereas I think what I would have wanted more was something moss green. So in order to make ink moss green, you add a little bit of brown ink from Vallejo as well. Now you can see me there in the background trying to sort of come up with a nice sort of proportion to get some sort of moss green, and eventually I was satisfied with it, and I'm not sure exactly what the proportions were. Honestly, you're just gonna have to try it. But I also saved some brown because I did paint over some brown details here and there just to make them seem a little bit more organic. So next I tried the sepia wash from Vallejo. I wanted to use this to darken the actual ground part of the miniature. As you can see, it didn't really darken it nearly enough, so I'm gonna come back to that later in the video. But that's what they look like now, and I'm liking the models. I really like these. These must be the first sort of non-evil miniatures that I've painted actually. Here we have them when they've sort of semi-dried a little bit more. So at this point, I of course was a little bit sloppy with my brushwork, so I just took some matte white and sort of reinforced the whiteness on the top of the mushroom hat, or whatever that's called. So just making sure that all of those sort of oopsies that I painted on the mushroom hats just, you know, become clear white, because I need clear white in order to make the colors sort of pop. Now I had some leftover white, so I figured I might as well pop in the eyes, because the wash from the previous step had already dried, and I just wanted white sort of dots. Now I'm using Army Painter's Drake Tooth. You could really use any sort of lighter beige green color. I'm just using that as a dry brush just to sort of catch some of the highlights on the models. And now to the exciting part. In this, I I knew I wanted to have a red and yellow sort of tone between on the actual mushroom hats. I used P3 and an army painter. I'm trying it out here on the wet palette, and you can see that, you know, I'm getting a fairly okay-ish blend, sort of. I'm getting this is a way for me to at least try it out before, you know, actually putting it on the model. Now, I start out with, the way I did it, I start out with just filling the entire hat with yellow, because I think honestly at this point I don't think I was sure whether or not where I wanted the red to be. Should the red be in the front or at the back? I'm very sort of organic in my ways. I don't think sometimes I've decided until the brush actually hits the model. But here you can see I'm just sort of trying to dot in the yellow, and then I'm coming with the red from above, and I'm really trying not to touch the paint. The yellow paint is still wet, but I'm trying to define sort of an extreme edge where there should be pretty much only red, and making sure to also grab the edges so we don't have any sort of yellow residue left. Now, once I've done this, I'm gonna try to sort of feather the border out ever so slightly, and hopefully what we should get is some sort of orange. And I think this is the point where I'm starting to discover, because I can't remember exactly what it is, but I know P3 colors work a little bit different than Army Painter. So next time I'm gonna do a wet blend like this, I'm gonna be sure to have colors from the same brand, because I think that they might have actually tried to separate a little bit. Thankfully, I think I got to tease them enough, but I had to reinforce sort of the yellow and the red and the yellow and the red and the yellow and red back and forth a couple of times. But eventually I was somewhat satisfied with it, and I really like the color. Sort of warm yellow towards pure red. It really, I don't know, for me it reminds me of autumn, you know, all of those beautiful colors that you can get on the trees, but also a little bit of, for some weird reason, race cars. Anyways, after I let it dry for a while, this is sort of the result, even though it's not exactly, it wasn't exactly sharp. Now, one thing that I knew I wanted to do was with their bodies, I wanted to darken it down and sort of dull it down a little bit more, make it more moss-like. And I remembered I actually have washes from Army Painter, and one of them is called Military Shader. And I figured that should probably be more mossy, and sure enough, that actually did much more of the work I was hoping the green ink in the beginning would do. So I pretty much covered the entire model except the eyes and the hat with this. Now, there were some details, small little fungi or mushrooms that these had in their arms and whatnot, and legs. I decided to use Vallejo red ink just to sort of dot them in. And the red ink is actually so vibrant, so you wouldn't believe that this is, you know, not a covering color, because it's very, very vibrant. And I knew this because I've used it before. So I decided just to sort of mark those in, and not completely, but just so, you know, giving the hint of there's some small mushroom buddies at their, you know, arms and legs and whatnot. And that's how they look currently, and already at this point I am actually quite, you know, happy with them. Now back to that ground. I used Citadel's Agrax Earthshade to try to darken it down even more. I am very, very, you know, I'm very tenacious, and I really want to ideally use washes because I didn't want to put on paint. Now this Fugen Orange from Citadel, I wanted to try to use that on the actual hat part. Not so much to sort of darken it down, but just to sort of make sure that everything blends a little bit more. Plus one important thing, and there was some wrinkles just at the beginning where the sort of yellow color comes out, and I wanted those to sort of pop a little bit. Now, I am using the yellow gaming from Vallejo, and I'm just using this similar to how I did the Umber Hulks, their hands. I just wanted to have something to sort of make the claws pop out, and I'm really loving these yellow inks and different inks, because they're so good at, you know, I guess it's sort of like glazes, just adjusting. And here you can see, now we can see the claws, and again, it's very important to make the face pop, and the hands is what I've heard. Apparently we humans tend to look at those two things. So with that, I brought out the black color just to sort of get the edge of the base and make it a nice frame for the miniature. And I think I forgot this, but I also used some purple on their beards or whatever it is. Just a purple wash, any wash will do really. But this is what they look like, and I actually put a little bit of grass tufts also there. It's my first time using it, but I figured, you know what? These guys will be in some sort of vegetated areas of some sort, and it sort of fits with the context. Now with that, those little twirls, nice, they're looking nice. Let's have some glamour shots, shall we? Alright guys and gals out there, have you painted any Myconids? Do you have boxes of shame that keep you up at night in your house? Please drop a comment, tell me what you think of the paint scheme, you know, like, share, please subscribe if you like what I'm doing. It means the world to me to see that, you know, what I put out is appreciated. And with that, I bid you farewell. Adieu.